Have you ever felt that eerie sensation when walking past a room in the house that seems to be watching you? You know, that door that's always locked, the one no one talks about, the one that gives you chills just by looking at it? Yeah. Some things we feel, but can't explain. And sometimes, the silence of an old house hides more than just memory, as it hides family secrets, nighttime noises, and a supernatural presence no one dares to confront. Today, you're about to hear a true horror story, sent in by one of our subscribers. A chilling account filled with mystery, jump scares, and that constant, creeping tension we love and fear. And the most disturbing part? Everything points to this being a real experience. This isn't just some spooky tale, it's a paranormal encounter that left deep marks on someone's life. At the center of it all is an old house, creaky wooden floors, doors that shut themselves, and deceptively calm appearances. And within that house, a grandmother. Sweet, kind, but hiding a dark family secret, locked away for decades behind the door of a forbidden room. A place no one was allowed to enter. Untouched. Sealed for good reason. So get comfortable, turn off the lights if you dare, and follow me on this journey. But fair warning, after hearing this story, you might never look at your grandma's house the same way again. You know those stories we hear and laugh off, half scared, thinking, someone has a wild imagination? Well, this isn't one of them. It all started with a simple email from a subscriber, titled "I need to tell you what happened at my grandma's house." That's all it took. From that moment, I was hooked. And if you've read enough horror stories, you know when there's an old house and a family secret, something serious is going on. What got me the most was the tone. It wasn't exaggerated or filled with forced suspense. It sounded like a genuine account from someone still trying to understand what they experienced. And I've read a lot of strange things, but this felt different. A kind of mystery that logic can't solve. The reader swore they had encountered a supernatural presence and insisted it wasn't a dream. It wasn't imagination. Right from the start, he described the grandmother's house: an old building, heavy furniture, the scent of damp wood, and hallways that echoed even the softest footsteps. The kind of house where the walls feel like they whisper. As a kid, he always avoided one particular room. The one at the end of the hallway, with the dark wooden door and cold brass handle. That room already carried a strange energy, something unseen, but deeply felt. But the worst part wasn't the room, it was the silence around it. No one in the family would talk about it. And the grandmother, usually warm and chatty, would go cold whenever someone brought up the locked door. He said he once heard noises at night coming from inside, like something being dragged. Or someone whispering something incomprehensible. That's when fear turned into obsession. If there's one thing I've learned from stories like this, it's that danger often lives in the details we ignore. The small signs that grow bigger, louder, until they become a full-blown paranormal event. And that's exactly what happened here. A strange mix of silence, chills, and unanswered questions. The more he tried to forget, the clearer it became: something or someone was trapped inside that room. And it didn't like being ignored. This story isn't fiction. It's not from a horror book. It was sent to me by a real person who asked to stay anonymous, and honestly, who could blame them? What they experienced, most people wouldn't have made it through. It started with a feeling, even as a child, that something in his grandmother's house was just off. And slowly, that feeling became much more real than he ever wanted it to be. At first, everything seemed normal: a big house, full of antiques and family history. But over time, he noticed the off-limits rooms, especially that one at the end of the hall, gave off a heavy, chilling energy. The kind that makes your skin crawl without knowing why. He tried to ignore it for years, but the noises and whispers just got stronger. Fear crept in like smoke, quiet, but constant. Like a presence that never really sleeps. What creeped him out the most was the family's silence. No one ever talked about that room. Every time he asked, his grandmother would look away, change the subject, or just say, "No one goes in there." He swore that once, walking past, he heard muffled crying as if someone was trapped inside, trying to communicate. That's when doubt turned to terror. He admitted he'd always been curious about horror stories, but he never imagined living one. It all felt like a movie until the night he actually saw something. A figure standing still, right next to the door. Pale, blurry, and with a face he didn't recognize. He searched for logical answers, but deep down, he knew this wasn't a trick of the mind. This was a real paranormal encounter. Experiences like this change how you see the world. Daily routines become less safe. A simple hallway turns into a tunnel to the unknown. And that sweet grandmother? Maybe she was hiding an entire past filled with family secrets. He swore it was all real. And honestly, with the level of detail and emotion in his story, I believe him. From the first time he walked into that house, something felt wrong. Like the place had a pulse of its own. It wasn't just creaking floorboards or a ticking wall clock, it was the constant feeling of being watched, like something unseen was lurking just out of sight. And always at the center of it all, was the locked room. Even on sunny days, the house felt gloomy. Light came in through the windows, but never reached the far corners. And whenever he passed the forbidden room, the silence grew thick. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. The surroundings would shift, subtle, but noticeable. Those noises weren't just the house settling. It was a mystery, waiting, begging to be uncovered. His grandmother, no matter how kind, would instantly change when that room was mentioned. Her eyes would harden, her voice would chill. "That room's not for children," she'd say, like someone guarding more than just a space. The rest of the family didn't talk about it either. But everyone knew there was a family secret in there. And maybe it was best left alone. But secrets like that don't stay buried forever. Over time, the mystery became part of daily Lithia routine fear. He said some nights he'd wake up to strange voices in the hallway, whispering right next to his bed. And yet, no one was there. It was like being stuck inside a horror story, but with no exit. The fear was constant. Quiet. Real. The tension grew. Like smoke filling every corner of the house. The signs became impossible to ignore: objects out of place, mirrors with unexplained marks, and always that door, shut tight. The full paranormal encounter hadn't happened yet, but it felt like everything was building toward it. Like a stage being set for something final. And the worst part? He could feel that the ghost was almost ready to show its true face. His grandmother was unforgettable. Always so loving, with that typical grandma vibe, full of old recipes, gentle advice, and tales from a bygone era. But something in her changed the moment the locked room was mentioned. Her face would harden, her body tense up, as if carrying a weight too heavy to share. She'd simply say, "There's nothing in there for you." But her tone. That tone said everything. No one in the family ever stepped inside that room. Not even to clean. It was a space frozen in time, ignored by everyone. Except her. She watched over that door like a quiet guardian. And oddly enough, the door was always clean. No cobwebs, no dust. As if it was part of some ritual. A way to keep a paranormal entity at bay. One time, The subscriber said he saw his grandmother standing silently in front of the door, whispering something he couldn't understand. Like a prayer. That moment stuck with him, proof that there really was a supernatural presence behind that door. And she knew. She never talked openly about it, but her eyes told the story. The eyes of someone carrying a family secret too dark to say out loud. For years, the family followed that invisible rule: don't ask, don't enter. Even when things felt heavy. But the older he got, the more obvious it became she didn't lock that room for tradition, she locked it out of fear. And maybe to protect them. As if opening that door would unleash something that no longer belonged to this world. The noises, the shadows. It was all part of something the house was trying to keep buried. And hey, race the irony: the more you try to hide something, the more attention it draws. The narrator confessed that, even as a child, he'd have dreams about what was inside. Strange dreams, endless hallways, whispers, shadows calling his name. It was like the room itself had consciousness. Like it wanted to be found. And deep down, maybe his grandmother knew that keeping the door shut forever just wouldn't be enough. It all started subtly. Just soft sounds at night, creaks from inside the walls, light scratches across the floor. The kind of thing you brush off. Probably the wind, old houses make noise. But when those sounds always came from the same place, the locked room, they became harder to ignore. He said his body would freeze every time he heard that creak from down the hall. Then came the whispers. Unintelligible words, like someone mumbling just on the other side of the door, in a raspy, dragging voice. Once, he pressed his ear against the wall and heard a faint, childlike giggle. It made no sense. No one had entered that room in years, yet everything pointed to something or someone being inside. That was when fear turned to pure terror. And it wasn't just him anymore. Others in the house began noticing things too. An uncle claimed he saw a shadow pass by the hallway late at night. His mother swore she heard heavy footsteps in the middle of the night. Even the grandmother, though she'd never admit it, began sleeping with a cross under her pillow. It was as if the entire household was under the influence of a growing supernatural force, yet no one dared to speak of it aloud. Then came the objects moving. Pictures crooked on the walls, locked doors appearing half open, items out of place. But one night changed everything. He woke up with the clear feeling that someone was standing next to his bed. When he opened his eyes, he saw a dark figure in the doorway. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It just watched. From that point on, the mystery became a true horror story. Every day brought a new sign. A whiff of an old perfume. A distant voice calling his name. Sudden chills in a closed room. The house, once warm and full of joyful memories, now felt like a spiritual minefield. Something was growing stronger, and all signs pointed back to the forbidden room. The barrier the grandmother had kept for so long was breaking. That spirit, that entity, wasn't going to stay silent for much longer. Curiosity, they say, is a dangerous thing. And eventually, it started eating away at him. After so many noises, whispers, and that relentless feeling of being watched, he made up his mind he had to know what was behind that door. He couldn't live with the fear anymore. If there really was a supernatural presence, then he was ready to face it. He started by watching his grandmother's routine. Learned where she kept the key tucked in a chain under her blouse. The plan was simple: sneak in when no one was around. But even then, it felt like the house was working against him. Every time he got near that door, something strange happened. The temperature dropped. His hair stood on end. The weight of terror pressed against his chest. One day, while his grandmother was out, He finally tried to turn the doorknob and swears he felt something pulling from the other side. Not forcefully, but as if warning him. Still, the choice had been made. That night, with the key finally in hand, he prepared. He brought a flashlight, tied a prayer ribbon around his wrist, and took a deep breath. This wasn't just an act of bravery. It was the start of a real-life paranormal investigation. Before unlocking the door, he confronted his grandmother just once more. She hesitated, cried, and finally let a sliver of the truth slip. That room wasn't just off-limits. It was sealed. According to her, something inside was never meant to be set free. A ghost, maybe? A family secret buried with the dust and time? She didn't give a clear answer. And that only made him more determined to know. So with a mix of fear and resolve, he turned the key. The lock clicked loud, echoing through the entire house. The smell that poured out was thick, stale. Like death that had been waiting. His flashlight barely pierced the darkness inside. It was like the shadows had a will of their own. And even before he stepped in, he knew this wasn't just an abandoned room. This was the beginning of a paranormal encounter that would change everything. What he saw inside that room was far beyond anything a horror movie could prepare him for. The space was frozen in time. Furniture covered in white sheets, old photographs on the walls, and a stained mirror that almost seemed to breathe. But the most unsettling part wasn't what he saw, it was what he felt. The air was thick, almost heavy, as if the entire atmosphere was weighed down by a supernatural presence. In the center of the room sat an old chest. Worn, rusted locks, and this part will send shivers down your spine. Scratch marks. Real, visible claw marks, like someone had tried to escape from the inside. When he opened it, he found personal items, letters, photographs, and finally a journal. It belonged to a young man named Elias, his grandmother's brother, whom the family believed had died in an accident. But according to those journal entries, he never left that house. He died right there. In that very room. The journal told a disturbing story. Elias had started acting strange before his death. Talking to himself. Saying he saw shadows. Swearing he was being followed by some kind of paranormal entity. The family thought he was losing his mind. They locked him in the room for his safety. And left him there. The ghost haunting the house was his. A forgotten soul. Betrayed by his own family. And now, he was reaching out, not out of vengeance, but out of sheer desperation. The grandmother wasn't locking the door to hide a crime. She was trying to contain a spirit. She believed that as long as the door stayed shut, Elias would remain inside. But over the years, his energy had grown. Every sound, every apparition, was a cry for help or a warning. That night, the narrator finally understood his grandmother wasn't the villain. She had been trying to protect everyone from Elias. And from the past. That night, the spirit revealed itself. A sudden gust of freezing wind slammed the door shut. The mirror shook violently. And then, a dark figure appeared in the corner. Pale, hollow eyes, lips slightly parted as if trying to speak. The narrator stood frozen. It was Elias, the forgotten uncle's ghost. And in that moment, instead of fear, he felt something else: compassion. The truth was finally out. But what now? Shut the door again? Or finally set the spirit free? Opening the door had been risky enough. But staying inside felt like pressing on an open wound. Every second that passed, he felt his lungs tighten, the air freezing, the flashlight trembling in his hand. And the mirror wasn't showing his reflection anymore. Something was getting closer. A paranormal force that had finally become fully aware of his presence, and it was growing stronger with every heartbeat. Suddenly, a loud snap like someone slamming the door. But he hadn't touched anything. His flashlight flickered, then went dark for a few seconds. When the light returned, Elias was gone from the corner. He felt a freezing breath on the back of his neck, and a voice low, raspy whispered his name. Not with anger. With pain. With longing. A ghost trapped between torment and a plea for mercy. The door locked behind him. He was trapped. Panicked, he tried to open it, but the handle wouldn't budge. That's when the room started to shake. Photographs flew from the walls. The mirror cracked. And something unseen pushed him to the ground. It was the peak of the manifestation, a paranormal encounter like no other. Elias no longer wanted to be remembered. He wanted to be heard. Then came a voice, his grandmother, crying on the other side of the door. She pounded with her fists, shouting what sounded like prayers. As if she somehow knew what was happening inside. He heard her pleading for forgiveness, calling her brother by name. And in that moment, something shifted. The violent energy in the room began to retreat. Elias, whatever was left of him, was listening. The force didn't vanish. It changed. It became human. The door unlocked on its own. He bolted out, drenched in cold sweat, heart racing. His grandmother pulled him into her arms like someone saving a child from a burning building. And then she said something he'd never forget. Now he knows he hasn't been forgotten. That night marked the end of a long, painful chapter, but not a peaceful one. Because ghosts like Elias don't disappear with forgiveness. They simply quiet down. For a while. And the house, now silent again, still holds its secret. After that night, nothing was ever the same. The house became quieter, as if it had exhaled for the first time in decades. Elias' ghost never appeared again, but the atmosphere remained strange, like he was still there, watching from a distance. The supernatural presence didn't vanish, it just changed. The narrator said that sometimes, he'd still feel a light chill or hear a door creak with no explanation, except now. It didn't scare him. It felt more like a gentle warning. His grandmother never brought it up again. She locked the door once more, but this time with calm eyes, like someone who understood that some things aren't meant to be solved. Only accepted. She seemed lighter, as if a burden had finally been lifted from her shoulders. But her grandson knew that the family secret hadn't gone away. It was part of the house now. Part of the bloodline. Part of the story. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly where it should stay. He admitted he avoided that room after everything, but never feared it again. The experience had changed him. Not just because of the spiritual intensity, but because of what it revealed about his own family. Sometimes, the forbidden rooms we avoid are hiding truths that need to be faced. And sometimes, it's better to leave certain doors closed. What he went through wasn't just a scare. It was a paranormal meeting with the past, and with the cost of silence. As for Elias' spirit, no one really knows. Maybe he was freed. Maybe he chose to stay behind, now in peace. What matters is that he was finally heard. The horror story may have ended, but the scars remain. A quiet warning for all of us: not all ghosts want to hurt us. Some just scream because they don't want to be forgotten. And if you've ever felt like something was trying to reach you through the walls, maybe it's time to listen. Today, the narrator shares his story not to frighten, but to warn. Some houses carry more than just memories. They hold pain, secrets, and sometimes a spirit waiting to be redeemed. He ends his tale with a phrase that still gives me chills. We think we choose when to discover the truth. But sometimes, it's the truth that chooses us. So now I ask you, would you have the courage to walk into your grandma's forbidden room? And now, after all this, do you still believe that closed doors only hide dust and forgotten junk? Or could it be that the silence in certain rooms says more than 1,000 words? Stories like this make us wonder about what we've locked away, not just in houses, but in ourselves. And most importantly, how much does the unknown attract us more than the familiar? Would you dare to investigate a mystery like this in your own family? Have you ever felt that strange sensation like you were being watched? Maybe that whispered voice you heard wasn't just in your head. So hey, race, something to think about. What would you do if you discovered that your home's walls hold more than bricks and memories? If this story gave you chills, made you reflect, or simply held your breath for a few moments, then you're in the right place. On this channel, every video brings not only terrifying stories, but also the deeply human, emotional truths behind them. Real people, real fear, and experiences that deserve to be told. So go ahead, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you don't miss any new investigations, and send this video to that one friend who loves a good suspense. And if you've got a real-life story of your own, send it in. Who knows? The next horror story featured here might just be yours.